CFB paint back, and in our like, if you were to do this like a 30 for 30, you'd be like, what if I told you that 7 teams in the top 21 were going to lose the week before rivalry week, which is notoriously kind of a quiet week in college football, as especially in the Southeast, where many teams are taking a nice breather with like an FCS team, but not this year. It was eventful from start to finish. I guess the first thing I would say is, man, I guess my big takeaway is nothing. Don't take anything for granted this year. It feels like everything that I thought was possible, like even if I dreamed it up as a scenario, like here's the chaos scenario in one conference or another, or kind of across the board. I, I mean, I never did not have Alabama going to Norman, Oklahoma, and only scoring a field goal on the bingo card. So, wow. I don't know if there's any place you wanted to get started. It was just, wow, what a weekend.
It was a great weekend. I'm going to start with my favorite game of the entire weekend. The Florida Classic, Bethune-Cookman, Florida A&M. Rattlers pulled out the win. No, that wasn't really my favorite game, but I'm still excited for the Rattlers. Shout out the Rattlers. Everybody
Strike them.
We like them because we're from Tallahassee. Looking at the top 25 from now, right? It got posted this week. I'm looking at AP top 25. Oregon, no losses. Ohio State, their one loss is to Oregon on a one point thing. Texas, you had an amazing Georgia game. Georgia played flawless, and they had a different quarterback than they have had in some of the games. Penn State ran into Ohio State. Okay. Notre Dame had the NIU slip up. But then you go into Georgia, who lost to, oh my goodness. Georgia lost to
Ole Miss and Alabama.
Yeah, Ole Miss and Alabama. You have Tennessee, who's lost to, I think, Alabama and
Arkansas.
Then you have Miami, who lost to Georgia Tech. You have SMU, who lost to BYU. You have Indiana, who ran into the buzzsaw of Ohio State. And Boise State, who ran into Oregon. But then you go like, you have this 9-2, 8-3, just all the way down for the rest of it. It's like Clemson, Alabama, and we're talking like Bama's lost 3 games for the first time in 13 years. They were about to tie Florida State's streak of 2 lost seasons since in the poll era. They don't do that. Ohio State might be will hit 13 this year, and then they could challenge for Florida State. But yeah, then you have Ole Miss that's dropped games to Florida, dropped games to good heavens, LSU beat them.
LSU and who was the last one that they?
It probably was like a South Carolina.
Was it Kentucky? They lose to Kentucky?
Oh, yep, they lost to Kentucky. Yeah, that's right, 2017.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much parity in college football right now, and it is so much fun because of it. Then the NIL is bringing a lot more, like chaos to the landscape because everybody can get a good quality player instead of all the quality players going to Georgia. So you all might have 1 or 2 that can carry the team. And if you have a good player that plays great in one day, you win the game. I mean, I'm going to just throw DJ Lagway on their first touchdown against Ole Miss. There are 2 times where he is hit and pretty much has a guy hanging off of him, and he throws first down strikes on 2
He's
plays.
An exciting player, yeah.
It's like,
hated as an FSU fan, excited to watch him just as a football fan.
Yeah, if you have a quality talent like that, that can carry you a long ways. I mean, the other side is if you have a player that, like your tight end, Ole Miss's tight end, Dupree, who dropped 4 passes in the first half or something like that, it can hurt you in the past. Sorry for catching one there, but it was a fun week. That's all I got to say. But my favorite game was by far the Oklahoma-Alabama game, and we can talk about those later. So
yeah, we can jump into it. I guess the other thing that I would say just kind of right off the bat is no one that's left out of the playoff has really any reason to complain.
Yeah, you lost 2 or 3 games.
You've had ample opportunity, and you've got lots of help from the people around you. So there really isn't a whole lot of room for anyone to complain. Well, I'm sure there'll be preferences as to who goes where and who does what, and the team that gets left out will be upset and disappointed. But there's as much margin for error as you could have ever dreamed in a 12-team scenario.
Are we talking a world where you only have 3 SEC teams in this potentially?
I wouldn't put it past the committee to still give them 4 or 5.
Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Your next one would be Alabama, but Alabama just slipped. And depending on how Auburn's not anybody to hang your hat on. But then you like if I'm looking at the Big Ten, you've got Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and
I
then
think they still get
Indiana.
4. I think Indiana will still be in there
And then
unless
you
they
got
lose
Boise
this
State
week.
from other group of whatever, and then you have Miami and SMU. I can't imagine either one of them potentially dropping a game. But who knows?
Except against yeah. I think that they'll both win this week,
Yeah.
but then one will lose to the other. But I think unless that game is like 17 plus, you probably are both getting in at this point. I think.
My thought process on this, and I'm not right. I'm not a member of the playoff committee or whatever, of course. But like my thought process is, it's like you got to the game, you earned another game. The only thing you should be able to do is improve your stature, not hinder yourself. So if I get blown out by if I'm Oregon and I get blown out by Ohio State, that shouldn't put me out of by any means. Or even if Indiana had gotten in, and let's say Ohio State loses this weekend to Michigan, and Indiana gets in, and they get blown out by Oregon, should they really be hindered by that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like if you do that for one, you kind of have to do it for all, and I don't know if you have space to do it for all.
Yeah,
So
and I get that it's an additional data point that you had, but they also earned that data point where like anybody else got in that game. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out when we get to conference championships. But yeah,
yeah, there's still what 2 weeks of, or I guess 1 week of the regular season, then championship week, and who knows? Maybe it gets more clear. Maybe it gets even more muddied. Who knows? Um, I, I mean, yeah, I was going to say the other thing that I wanted to sort of talk maybe a little bit more high level before we get into games, like conference races are starting to finally clear up,
yep.
but for the Big 12.
And even that one is starting to clear up. We know there's mostly 4 teams that can get in, and 2 teams control their destiny: Arizona State, and Iowa State.
Does Iowa State? Because
Yeah, if they
Iowa
both
State,
win, they're in. I think.
right? If they both win, they're both in. But does
They're,
Iowa State? I think Iowa State needs a. Oh, maybe that's it. Never mind. I think I'm wrong on that. I think you're
actually,
right.
you're right. If Iowa State wins and Arizona State, oh no, if Arizona State wins and there's a BYU loss, like there's some weird scenario where Iowa State can win out and doesn't quite make it in. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but
But
I'll,
yeah, I think the most likely scenarios is like if all 4 of the teams that are currently tied atop the Big 12 win, it's Iowa State and Arizona State.
yeah.
If one team loses, if it's Arizona State that loses, then it becomes BYU and Iowa State. Of those, if one of those, if Colorado wins, BYU wins, Iowa State wins, and Arizona State loses.
Mm-hmm.
BYU loses, then it's the same thing. It's Iowa State, Arizona State of those 3. If Colorado loses, I think it still is the same. So I think you're right. I think Iowa State is in if they win. Just win and you're in.
Yeah.
And that's the same is true for Arizona State. I understand, as I understand it. Um, so yeah, that one's clearing up a little bit, but it's still fun to think like, hey, if all 4 of these teams lose, there's like a world where Baylor and West Virginia are in the Big 12 championship. It's just like what?
Yeah.
Come from behind, come out of nowhere. Um, yeah, let's talk through a couple of them. I guess we haven't even touched on the Indiana Ohio State game. Really strong start for Indiana. Not a whole lot after that.
Yeah, you have 2 drives of 75 yards each, and then the other, I think they have the ball useful times. They have the ball 9 times in that game. So of the other 7 drives, I think 3 of those end up in negative yardage, and then the other 7 minus 3 would be 4. 3 out of the other 4 end up in under 10 yards of offense. They literally could not move the ball to save their life, and once they got hit by the special teams blunder of the block kick or the fumble kick or whatever it is, and then the kick return for a touchdown, they were buried for sure. So.
Yeah, it was disappointing effort. I thought it would be more competitive than that. I didn't necessarily see them winning. I think that's kind of where I landed. I was like, I don't know. I kind of hoped they'd be able to keep it interesting for a half. They did, through 1 quarter they were winning, but yeah, I mean, it kind of ended up snowballing on them. I don't know if it'd be quite that lopsided the next go around. Again, you had some pretty gnarly things with turnovers and with the kick return touch or the punt return touchdown. It is what it is, right? But yeah, it's still nothing to take away from Indiana's incredible season, 10-1. Got to close it out still, but I think they're going to be in the playoff. And what an awesome, awesome inaugural season for Craig Signetti.
That
Um,
Ohio State's defensive line really, it looked like, if you kind of flash back to the Georgia Texas game, it kind of felt like that again, where the defensive line just owned Indiana and Indiana could not do anything. I mean, you talk about 8 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks. Like, we're talking 13 plays in a game where you probably ran what? I don't know off the top of my head how many plays. Probably like 57 is my guess or something like that. I'm looking real quick. I don't see the number off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, not a ton of plays, and you end up with 13 of them are negative. You're in some trouble.
Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah. Um, yeah. So yeah, excellent effort. Good call out there, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer living up to their billing. I feel like they are really quiet sometimes, and then sometimes in really big games they just find a new level. So good for them. Excited to see them go through. Obviously, they've got Michigan in the game this next week, and then postseason. But let's see other games. I barely saw even highlights of Penn State Minnesota. Did you see any of that game?
I didn't watch a ton of
Okay,
scoreboard
that's
watching,
fine.
but it
Yeah,
didn't look like
that's yeah.
they. I mean, it looked like close, but the one thing that I went back and saw, I was like, Penn State's up 26-23 or 26-22, and then they decide to kick a field goal instead of going for it. I get it; it's 4th and 8, but like, you're gonna have to score again. You think you're gonna be able to score a field goal again potentially, maybe, and you think you'll get a stop. My thought process is like, you got to go for a touchdown on that one. You want to give yourself a chance to win because, okay, great. If you miss it, you go for another touchdown later on. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember the distance there for that kick.
It's a 27-yard kick.
Okay. So okay, yeah, I can't remember that. Yeah, like I said, I was scoreboard watching this one too, just kind of like checking in on it here and there, mostly because I don't know if I ever really believed that Penn State was going to lose it, right? Until that drive, it's like, okay, if they score a touchdown here and they take the lead with 6 minutes left, they got a shot. I understand the philosophy. I believe they had all 3 of their timeouts and like 5.5 minutes left when they finally gave it back.
Yeah.
Or when they kicked off, something like that, and then they just never got the ball back, right? Like Penn State played keep away for the rest of the night or rest of the game, and I'm right there with you. I think you play. Yeah, I think you have to go for that. I agree. It's funny. Like, that's been our new in our house. Like whenever there's like a critical high leverage situation in a game, we're like, are you going for this or what are you doing? Including like we'll get to this game later, but like with the um, Auburn A&M game in the first overtime, Auburn scores after Texas A&M. I leaned over to my wife and was like, "Hey, are you going for this, or are you kicking the extra point and going to a second overtime?" Uh, but yeah, we always play those. What?
What was her call?
I think I can't remember what she said now. Now I have to double back. I was like, I think I'd go for it, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it just like those high leverage situations. I feel like Minnesota played it a little scared. Um, and in the words of the now looking like a savant Billy Napier, scared money don't make money. Uh, so here we go. Like, yeah, that was one that was a little, yeah, just surprising to see again. I need to go back and actually like watch the game. Penn State, they're kind of always this team, right? They're always like 10+ wins, beating who they're supposed to, maybe flirt with disaster here and there, but it's not often that I'm like, oh, you know what, these guys are over the top. So they still, I think, have
I told you
you
earlier,
know,
they lack that killer instinct. So we'll see that in the playoffs. They lack that killer instinct. They're not going to beat teams significantly.
clipping that one. That we're putting that there. There's our new short. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's move on to a couple others. Army Notre Dame. Do you have anything to say about this one? Just
They
played
roll
out the way I thought it would. Yeah. Okay.
exactly how
Um,
I thought it would.
yeah.
This Notre Dame team, like I saw I think a tweet. I think it was coming from. Ooh, I'm gonna get this wrong, so I'm not gonna say the name who it was. But they're like, "Oh, what's the vibes check? Who has the best vibes going into the like towards the end of the season?" And they're like, Notre Dame is one of them. Like just the teams that are on the up and up. And I can't remember exactly who all they put on there. SMU, they had somebody, but like yeah, Notre Dame was the one I was like, that's a vibe team. Like they had one little blip and they have just. You've seen other teams that have been like really good on offense and kind of come down to earth, and Notre Dame is just continuing ascension right now. And they
Yeah.
look like a quality team. So
They do. They do. I part of me is like, well, what happens when they face a real defense? So,
and
um,
that's what happens with the other teams. They all played no duddy at first, and now they're playing real teams. And so it's I
yeah,
agree with
yeah.
you.
So yeah, we'll see.
What are you talking
Okay.
about? They played Florida State.
Yeah, yeah. Oof. Uh, no comment. Alabama, Oklahoma. I think we talked about it a little bit. Let's get into this one.
Dude,
Uh,
okay. All for Kyle's
go.
sake. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll do it. Like, man, awesome environment, awesome effort by the defense. The defense won the game. I mean, it's kind of an open and shut case, right? Like, literally, the defensive touchdown would have won them the game because they held Alabama to 3. Um, there was, and I want to just like I need to like get a better get like another person's opinion, or not opinion but like explanation on Alabama had a called back touchdown at the start of the fourth quarter. I don't know if you saw that.
Was it that started fourth quarter? The one that went to Ryan Williams in the corner.
Yeah, it went to Ryan Williams,
That was
and
a
I just
terrible call.
see. I don't fully understand that rule. See, when they first said illegal touching, I thought it was because he went out of bounds. Because
Yeah, he
again,
wants
it's a tight. You don't see the all 22. He clearly doesn't go out of bounds when they give the broad shot, but they say he's covered up. Which again, I don't fully understand uh, how the formation rules are written. Right. This is like that's like kind of a more technical aspect of football that I don't pretend to fully understand. But it sounded like, based on the broadcast, they're like, I don't see anything that says that he should be an ineligible receiver.
Well, yeah, and then the flag is thrown so late, which I kind of get if you think he was covered up, like because why throw the flag until he touches the ball? Because it's not illegal touching until he touches the ball. So that
Yeah, that was my
argument
thought on that
on
part.
the on the cat broadcast didn't make sense to me, but he wasn't covered, and I think the ref just made a misjudgment, and then thought like, oh that was the outside guy, that was the inside, or I don't even know because that would have been the inside guy to be covered. So I have no idea what they were thinking there.
Yeah, I wish I could even explain it for the audience because I don't fully understand exactly how the rule works.
So
Um,
I watched that game again to see if I felt like that was going to be like, oh, that was a game changer, or oh, Bama would have had a chance to win that game. I don't think Bama would have had a chance, even if that was a touchdown.
I agree. I don't think it changes the outcome, mostly because they still had 14 more points that they had to come up with, and really hadn't shown much. It would have been interesting because it was right at the start of the fourth quarter. Who knows if the crowd and the defense starts to tighten up a little bit? But I don't think
Yeah,
it's the biggest change. But
I
like
think
it
there's only
was
like
just
8.5
fascinating
minutes
to
left
think about it.
when that
Hmm?
happens. I think there's only 8.5 minutes when that happens.
Oh, is that right? I had it earlier in the fourth quarter, but
Oh,
that's
yep,
just me
14,
going off.
14 minutes.
Okay. So anyway, like all that to say, like I don't think it necessarily changed the outcome of the game, but it was just kind of interesting that it's very rare that the broadcast team just like throws the refs completely under the bus. It felt like they did on that one, so it's like okay, that must have been more egregious than my passing knowledge of again the formational rules and how they're written. But yeah, Jalen Milroe, rough night, 3 interceptions. One of them he's hit as he throws it, so I give him a pass on that one. But the other two, one went for a touchdown, the other one nearly went for a touchdown. Um, and Oklahoma's defense had a heck of a game.
Well, and
Would love to. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
if I go, Jalen Milroe, he wasn't helped at the beginning of the game. I mean, if you watch that first half, there are a number of drops in that first half. We're not successful, and then players are not blocking. Like the pick that goes for a touchdown. Oh no, I'm thinking of another game. But the pick or players weren't blocking. I remember it was one point in time where I think it's Danny Stutzman, or he like kind of just goes around one of the blockers and then tackles Jalen Milrow, and it was just kind of like Alabama could not figure out how to block Oklahoma at all, and Oklahoma had the right. I don't know. Their speed off the edge was just the right combination that confused Alabama, and also that like the combination of like the types of like stunts and blitzes that they made. There was multiple times where I actually paused the game, and it was there are 4 or 5 Oklahoma players behind the line, I mean, all around. At one point in time, I think in the second quarter, Jalen Milrow, dodges a sack, steps forward, and then just sits down because there are 5 Oklahoma players right around him, and he's like, "It's a 2 yard loss, but you aren't going to get away from this." It's like, I might as well, okay, whatever. But that was how it felt like the entire game, and it didn't feel like there was any help for Jalen Milrow to get going, and then he tried to play hero ball a little bit and ended up the game for him.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing I mean, I think it's kind of both lines of scrimmage that Oklahoma won, which was not how I expected that to play out. Um, Rushed for what 200? Let me see, 260 yards on 49 carries, so averaging 5.3 yards a rush, almost 50 carries deep. Like that's crazy.
Well, yeah, and Jackson Arnold was a magician with the ball. He played and read the situation so well over and over and over and over again, and it was just very very impressive to watch. The other thing I really really enjoyed about this game more than anything else was like watching how fast Alabama triggered on anything that was running. The safeties came down so quick. If they weren't blitzing already, the safeties were down right away, and it was just like if there was a play action or anything like that, and like, we trust our corners to handle your guys' receivers. We don't think Jaden Miller can put it in the perfect spot. Great, we're going to stop the run, and they just move so fast. I think we talked about this again earlier this year that this team just triggers quick, and their defense flows fast. It's a fun one to watch. So I don't know. I love the game. It was a great game.
Yeah, that was a shocking result, to say the least, and a fun one to watch. Um, Sorry, I'll open up the board. Where do you want to go from here?
I will say one more thing about that game. I was worried about the second quarter because it felt like Oklahoma could move the ball, but wasn't quite finishing their drives. And I was like, "Uh-oh, this might be just like it's just a matter of time until Alabama kicks in." And
Yeah,
then
until the
finally,
dam breaks. Yeah.
yeah, the dam broke, and they finally scored. Oklahoma scored, and then they had to pick for a touchdown, and then it's like, all right, you're in good shape. So, um, yeah, where do I want to go next? Oh, good heavens, so many good games. Should we go Florida Ole Miss next?
Yeah, let's do
Oh,
it. You're gonna probably have more on the. I only caught the tail end of it, but we'll go ahead, go with it.
so yeah, just watching that game, even the like specifically, I want to talk about like the first half. Jackson Dart I felt like Jackson Dart wasn't getting the help he needed. Um, I think who's the receiver? I'm gonna pull this up real quick. I
Trey
don't see him
Harris is
on here.
their biggest
No, I'm thinking of their
one.
tight end. What, I think it's Dupree is the tight end in that game,
No, that's
and
the Bama tight end. You're thinking of
oh,
Priestcorn,
uh, yeah, okay.
Caden
So I'm
Priestcorn.
thinking of the game.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. So in this game, I felt like honestly, especially the second quarter, I felt like Florida's defense was playing really, really great, and I felt like Ole Miss's offense was playing just as great and was able to, Florida would push them into a 4th and 1 or a 3rd and 1, and Ole Miss could not quite convert, or they'd have some magician play where they kind of go for the 4th and 1, they fake it, and Jackson Dart drops it over the top and he catches a receiver over the top. Like that second quarter, I felt like both teams were playing super, super high level, and then it just when I think Ole Miss couldn't finish at the end of that half to get that touchdown because they had driven the whole field, and honestly, like they had that catch that it's a 36, and Harris makes the catch and falls and gets his hand hurt, and then he drops the ball and they call it an incomplete. I honestly kind of thought that was a catch, but I get the whole he didn't make a football movement. That's where I felt like the air went out of the room because then they can't convert on 3rd and 6. Or, yeah, they can't convert on 3rd and 6, and then they have to go kick the field goal on 4th and 6, and so it ends up being like kind of just sucks their life out. But it was just fun just watching Florida's defense kind of trigger as fast as they could, and then DJ Lagway just being able to do whatever he wanted to against that team.
Yeah. Yeah, like we said earlier, DJ Lagway is a pretty special player. Um, I mean, not his best game, but Jaden Baugh also. They've got a really fun group of really young players. So Florida, you could buy stock now. I think you can get it pretty cheap, and I think
You
you
should have
could.
bought 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right, that would have been better. But even now, I think you can get it cheaper than what it's going to be in a year and a half.
No, dude.
Um,
I think if you're not on the Florida train right now, knowing that this will be a much better team next year, I think you're crazy. Because like, just look at the way they've played games. You got the last three. You got blown out by Texas, but you finished the fourth quarter pretty strong. Then you win last week at home. You win this one at home. You're gonna beat Florida State. Like, come on.
easily, and one has to think they're going to be a transfer destination where it's like, hey, look, we got DJ Lagway. People want to play with the best players, and like that's his freshman year. He's only getting better, right? Is the sales pitch, right? And I think it's a pretty easy pitch to make.
He's
But
got to get better on those short to medium throws. He tends to be relying on the long throw, and in this game, his long ball wasn't perfect either. He missed quite a
yeah,
few.
there's certainly some improvement to be made for sure. I'm just saying, like, if I'm one of Florida's coaches and I'm looking for help for him on the offensive line, shoring up the receiver core. I think they've got some okay pieces there. I think they could get better, is what I'm saying, and there'd be an opportunity to level that up. And I think lots of top players are fielding that call, right?
Oh, for sure.
I would. I'm saying if I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good place to be. Um, so salute to the Gators getting it done versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss really pushed their chips in this year, and they're 9-3.
That's got to be so
I guess
frustrating.
they're not even 9-3. They're 8-3.
Yeah.
I expect them to be 9-3,
We got Mississippi State next week.
but I expected them to beat Florida too, right? Like, uh, oh man, that would be disaster if you lose the Egg Bowl. Like that'd be real disaster. But how big's the drop off next year? I think it's pretty big.
Yeah. I don't know. Is the
We'll
growth?
have to see. We'll have to see who goes pro, who goes elsewhere. And you got to feel for Jackson Dart, who, yeah, like you said, he maybe wasn't getting a ton of help, but at the end to throw the pick that ends up getting overturned, and then to throw it again, basically, that's a brutal sequence. That's rough.
Well, and the pick for a touchdown in that game, where he. Oh, what am I thinking of? Which one's? No, there's not the pick for a touchdown in that game. I'm thinking the
I
other
was
one.
gonna say I didn't catch that, but
No, I'm thinking the pick for a touchdown in the Oklahoma game. I think it was a little ridiculous. The wide receiver doesn't block, and the cornerback just comes and picks it.
yeah, he just lets him through.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, what was a pick in this one? Was there a pick for a touchdown in this one too? No.
I'm not aware of one, but uh,
The
what
Florida
I
and
was
the,
saying is like right at the end, that end sequence. Did you catch that part where he
I did not
throws an
see.
interception? Okay, so they're trying to, yeah, they're down 7. They're driving, trying to tie the game or potentially take the lead if you were to go for it on go for 2 if you were to score. But sorry, let me look at the play-by-play real quick so I can get this right. So he throws a pick. Well, yeah. So he throws a pick with what, like a few minutes left. He throws an interception with 132 left in the end zone. Ill-advised pass. There's like 3 Gators out there, um, but they have all their timeouts, and they force Florida to punt after 3 plays, 7 yards, and only 29 seconds off the clock. And then Jackson Dart throws another interception at the end. So he throws interceptions on back-to-back drives, but in the second one, he throws a pick, like I think the play before or 2 plays before, and they review it and they say, hey, he didn't actually catch it, right? Like, so it's like almost intercepted, but it's not. And then he gets a second chance, and then like I don't know if it's the next play or like 2 plays after, but like throws a pick like almost immediately following that. Yeah, one of those 2. There's a couple incomplete passes, but like, and it's funny because it's the same. Uh, oh yeah. The same person ends both the drives. Bryce Thornton, who I believe is also is he a freshman too? He might be a sophomore. But yeah, they've got a really good kind of really good young core there. Let me find Bryce. Thornton is a sophomore. So yeah, but they've got some things brewing in Gainesville, and we always kind of had said like, look, the organization's like organization being like the how organized they are on game day in terms of having the right number of people on the field and having no one with the same number on the field. Um, but the recruiting has been really sharp. It looks like it's kind of up and to the right too. It's trending in the right direction. So good on the Gators. Don't love to see it as an FSU fan, but you got to recognize it when it's there. Do we want to talk BYU Arizona State?
Sure.
Did you catch this game?
I feel like, huh?
Did you catch this game, or I don't know if you saw this one or not.
I feel like if I'm a BYU offensive coach, I need to call the game. I need to call this in a hurry up offense and make it mostly passing at the beginning to get Retzloff in rhythm. If you watch him all season, if he can get in rhythm and when he's moving quick, they can move that 2 minute ball pretty well. Minus the errors of talking about how much time to waste and not waste. But that's what ended up getting him clicking. Like that second half, you had a sense of urgency, so you basically had to run a quick pace offense and fast tempo, and he started to his stride and just connected on everything and actually made it a game. I mean, BYU getting down 21-0 is what kills them. And then they have that halftime speech. I don't know if you got to hear the halftime speech. That
Oh, I heard it.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, oh, this is okay, and I'm like, yeah, well, if it's the standard you want to set, it's not okay. But I'm calling the kettle black, so I'm not going to sit there and say anything terrible. But like, I get it's football, but you still kind of don't want that. But then in the end, you give yourself a chance to win the game. Arizona State has the ball and does a very similar thing to what Norvell did, and so it was kind of interesting when Kenny Dillingham started like doing this run back, waste the clock, and I'm like, oh, this is what Norvell would have done. Like he probably learned this from Norvell because I've seen Norvell do this and be like, all of us like, throw the ball up in your hands. I know it works for Norvell. He hasn't had to come back to bite him, but it almost comes back to bite him in this game.
Well, yeah. So I texted that exact same thing to a buddy of mine who's an Arizona State fan. I was like, I think that's where this comes from, and like in theory, it's not the worst thing to do. 7 seconds is a long time for a single play. I, yeah, but before we go, maybe we like talk about that. I had some thoughts kind of ahead of that. You're right. Like going down 21-0 is a real problem. Uh, tackling on first contact on Camp Scadaboo is number one, extremely difficult. So I understand the task is hard, uh, but critical in a couple of times. To not My frustration with it from the BYU side is like the first person to touch him, you don't necessarily have to get him to the ground, but you just have to hold him, right? Like don't you should be hanging on to him even if he's dragging you. Let the cavalry get there. But there was 4 or 5 times where that person like kind of sold out to get him on the ground and ended up not, ended up whiffing, right? And it was just a problem, and it turned some 4 yard runs into 8 yard runs and stops that would have got you to third down or potentially to fourth down into first downs. That was the part that was frustrating for me from a defensive standpoint. I think the defense, by and large, did its job, right? Like the offense, like you said, can't start that slow. I do agree. I think that they were starting to find some holes and find some things like particularly their wide receivers versus Arizona State secondary. I expected that to be more of an advantage for BYU, and it really only surfaced in the last 20 minutes or so of the game. So that was kind of a
Yeah,
disappointing that you couldn't take advantage of what I think was a good matchup for you for longer stretches of that game. Um, yeah, totally disagree with the way that they handled uh, they handled the end of game scenario. I understand you don't want to give the ball back, but to me,
go get a touchdown. Go get a
yeah,
touchdown.
like score that touchdown and it's 2 possessions, and so you're like, all right, now we get to play. We have to play defense, but they have to score twice, so they have to score on this, which they've done better at, in the second half. But then they have to recover an onside kick and score again. I am stunned that they didn't try and punch that in, like,
Yeah.
because like worst comes to worst, I try it and I don't. Like even then, I could even theoretically, I guess you could kick the field goal and that puts you up 8, huh?
Yes, if you kick the field goal, it's 8.
So yeah, you kick the field goal and you go up 8, then I just the run out the clock that way. If anything, I would do that, like not the retreat, but like just try and stay up in the pocket as long as you can before you have to take a knee, right? Like we've seen people do it that way where all 10 people blocking kind of understand like, hey, the QB is going to stay on his feet as long as he can. So it's not my job just to prevent them from getting through immediately. It's hold my block as long as I can so that we can get as much time
Well,
off the clock during the play as
and that's
possible.
exactly what I do. I put 10 in 10 to block, and I hold, and I hold, and I hold, and I hold.
Are you saying like commit a holding penalty?
I hold the defenders, and I waste 10 or and then I take that 10-yard loss. Okay, great. There you go.
Did they fix that though? Did they fix that part of it? I know that
They
with
can put
the
time back on the clock. They don't do
well,
that.
I mean, so they patched up the one that Oregon did. So I just don't know if it applies to both sides of the football. Like where Oregon deliberately had 12 people on the field so that they could run off some time, and yeah, they gave a 5-yard penalty, but they shaved off a few seconds.
I don't know.
Like that part now, if that happens, they've changed that in season because they didn't
Yeah.
want other people doing it. So in the case of that Oregon game versus Ohio State, like they would have put that time back and given them the 5-yard penalty, so it basically wouldn't give you an advantage. So I don't know if it would also work. I would imagine it's kind of similar, but I don't know that. Um,
Yeah, I'm pulling up some information on that real quick to see.
yeah, do
If
your
the defense
research on
tries
that.
small players actively on and down, the offense can choose whether the 5-yard penalty and to have the game clock vote. It just says that specifically. It doesn't say holding. I don't know what the rule would be with holding, but honestly, or you just block. Yeah, you run the clock out as much as you can. Okay, we know what happens. We know that the ball lands out of in the stands, which kind of sucks for Arizona State, to be honest, because if the ball had landed not in the stands and landed on the sideline, it might have wasted that last little bit of the second. It
Yeah,
lands in the
exactly. It like hit it hit the ground probably like a second or so faster than it would have. But
yeah.
also like I got a couple of questions on that one too, where it's like I'm not sure how that's not a grounding because he's not
Oh,
outside the tackle box.
I don't know how it's not grounding, and then even I know that fans are kind of crazy, but like even you have to have some type of delay of game penalty.
Yeah, it certainly should be a penalty for that. And my wife and I were discussing that too because I was like, you might be able to get a grounding, get a delay of game, and potentially like when Kenny Dillingham's going crazy on the refs, you could have gotten an unsportsmanlike. Like you could have like got this really close.
Yeah, because
Um,
35 yards right there.
mm-hmm. But my thought was that I mean I'll need to go back and rewatch. But like, do you remember there was a BYU Utah game? I want to say like 2012, 2013,
Yeah.
somewhere in there, where they had to like kick the final field goal like 3 or 4 times because the Utah fans kept rushing the field.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a penalty. The first kick, there was an offside, or there was a time. Yeah, there was a bunch of different things that happened. But I think that they assessed the penalty on that one, so I'm a little surprised that they didn't do that here. I think most of it, like the best argument I can come up with, thinking of like from the ref's position, like look, you know, theoretically the game was over. We actually called the game over until we reviewed it and said no. So
Yeah.
I maybe give them a little bit of a pass there, but yeah, kind of a little bit of a disaster scenario to try and get everyone off the field. And
For that being said, Kalani Satake was really graceful about it. I don't know if you've heard the comments afterwards or even watched him.
I
At one point,
haven't.
Arizona State fans are running by him while he's sitting there, and before he's got on the headphones, he's talking because like the
Mm-hmm.
first 5 minutes are kind of like just chilling, and he's giving Arizona State fans like.
I did see the fist bumps. Yeah.
And then later on, he's like, they're like, "Oh, are you frustrated with this?" And he goes, "Like, I get it. Fans want to be excited. I don't want to penalize fans. Like, I get that they're excited. This was a great win for them. They had 2 top 25 teams." He's like, "It was just really classy." But if I was the coach, I'd been really frustrated. I'm like, "Listen, you got to enforce the rules here to some
Yeah, I
degree."
was gonna say I'm all for all of that he just said, but you got to go on the field at the right time.
Yeah,
And it's to me this is one of those things where like stadium staff like this is an easy fix where it's just like hey, like just talk to that front row like hey we understand you're coming, we get it, like this is a big win. And sometimes it's like all right well does Oklahoma need to be storming the field against a 9-2 Alabama? Probably not. or I guess an 8-2 Alabama, probably not. But like, you can just talk with that front row. They're your last line of defense basically, and say like, hey, look, I'm on the headset. Like, until I say go, just hold right here. Just exercise this much discipline. Um,
Yeah.
and
Also,
so
I
it
think
wouldn't be that hard to just say they all get the all clear. Like,
just looking at games earlier this year, I think Ole Miss rushed the field early against Georgia as well.
mm-hmm.
They didn't give a 5 yard penalty that time either.
Okay,
So
so we got to
we're
get that
still
one back in there. Just like I'm not a huge field stormer. I kind of get that they happen. I feel like they have to be deserved, and really, again, it kind of, I think it says something about your program when you're storming the field. It's like, we didn't expect this, so whatever. Again, like I think with the Arizona State one, it's more like in celebration of the year as a whole, right? This is their last home game, so I kind of get it. I can get behind it. It's just more like, how do we structure this so that the end of the game plays out smoothly and we don't have to do this whole mass exodus of people off the playing field so that we can play another down.
Did you see the video of the Arizona State fan on the last play? He's hiding in the BYU medical tent taking a video.
No,
He's like, BYU's tent. I was like, that's kind of funny.
that's funny. But yeah, slow start dooms BYU. Yeah, disappointing to come out kind of flat after a disappointing effort against Kansas. Need some help. If you're a BYU fan, you are big Arizona Wildcats fans or Kansas State Wildcats. You're basically cheering on the Wildcats. Is kind of
Although, so BYU doesn't control their fate. With that in mind, you had some of the right things happen this week that you needed. Minus, Iowa, minus Utah missing a 54-yard field goal to put the game into overtime against
yeah.
Iowa State. You had Colorado would drop a game, which I think nobody saw coming, and they dropped it in convincing fashion. And speaking of that game, I mean, you have Kansas now who's beaten Iowa State, BYU, Colorado, 3 of the top 4 teams in the Big 12. It's
In
just like,
successive weeks
yeah,
too.
they couldn't put it together at the beginning, and all of a sudden they're healthy and it's ready to go. So
Yeah, I feel bad for them that they weren't able to. Lots of one-score games, lots of really close losses in the beginning of the season. Um, Hoping they close it out against Baylor and get a bowl. I feel like they've earned it, but they got one more to get.
yeah, they definitely deserve it.
Sorry, you mentioned that Utah game. I just want to really quickly give a shout out to the fourth string QB, who I believe is a walk on at Utah. I'm gonna forget his Batari, I think is
Yeah,
his
Luke
last
Katari.
name. Was it Luke? Okay. Man, came in and gave quite an effort. You'd like to see their defense because he takes them, he gives them a lead, and it's just like, all right, defense has been playing like Warriors all night. I'm not trying to take away from the whole effort, but it's like you needed one more stop and you just couldn't get it. And even then, they get close enough to trot out the field goal kicker. He wasn't able to make it, which is kind of rough on senior night. Like, oh, that's
Well,
the
and it's like
lasting impression, huh?
there's 2 missed kicks in his last 2 home games
Is that
to
right?
win
Oh, you're
the
right.
BYU game.
Oof. Yeah, disappointing, but wanted to just quickly call out, like, yeah, the 4-string QB at Utah out here making plays, including like a 50-something yard run, was awesome. I was like, oh, I was watching that game. That was because as a BYU fan, you needed Utah to win that game. Um,
Yeah, it felt weird rooting for Utah.
See, I'm fine with Utah. I don't like them in the rivalry. It becomes really apparent when they're on the same field. It's like, okay, I actually hate these guys. But outside of that, I love Coach Whittingham. I think they run an awesome program. They're super competitive. Like, relative to what they do from a recruiting standpoint, like, they punch above their weight class consistently. And so it's hard not to respect that, right? And just kind of love some of that. So, we'll see if this is Witt's last year. I strongly suspect that it is.
Well,
But
he actually made comments. Was it
yeah, he
today?
said he would kind of consider it all and see what's best for the program. And
Yeah,
I think that all leads to this being his last year. But we'll see.
yeah.
I wouldn't be stunned. Again, no inside knowledge here, but I wouldn't be stunned if an announcement came this week or maybe right after their game, and that way Morgan Scalley can go out and be the head coach and kind of close the recruiting cycle with him as the lead man. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. We didn't even talk. Sorry, we're deep in this. There's a lot to unpack this week. Um, I can talk A&M Auburn if you
Yeah, go ahead.
want. Or okay. I know that you. It didn't sound like you saw much of this game, right? Okay. Uh, Wild game, just like way back and forth. Auburn scores super quickly in this game. Let me see, how fast was it? It was okay. So it took 3.5 minutes, 10 plays, 65 yards, but it is a there's a 31-yard pass that gets them down to the Texas A&M two. That's right. So it's like um, a couple of short runs, a big 30-yard pass. Um, yeah, yeah, that was the big play, and then the next play they it's incomplete. The next play, and they punch it in on 2nd and goal, but they score. Opening drive, place is going crazy. It's Jordan Hare. They're at home, and it just kind of was like this is going to be trouble. You could kind of tell,
Yeah,
and
so
things start to
I had the
snowball.
game up while I was playing Catan with some friends, and I'm looking up and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, holy cow! Like they score and again, and I'm like, it's 21-0. Like they're rolling. And then the next thing I do is like I win another game of Catan, of course, and I look back up and it's 21-14. And I'm like, okay, A&M might be back in this. Like, this is kind of nuts. And I didn't get to keep up with it. I mean, I knew at one point in time it was 24-28 and 31-28, but it wasn't doing all of it.
Yeah, I think what the name of the game here was like A&M after Auburn scores the opening touchdown, drives the ball. Let's see, 40 yards basically, misses a field goal, so no points on that possession. Then Auburn a two-play 64-yard drive again with there's the 63-yard touchdown to Cam Coleman, who went off early in this game, and then the following drive is 11 plays, 50 yards for A&M, ends in an interception, and then Auburn is able to take that and score another touchdown. Um, yeah, tons of explosive plays. So first drive, Auburn has a 31-yard pass. Second drive, 63-yard pass. Third drive, a 60-yard pass. So like they just dialing them up, and 21-0, and it's like, okay, that A&M might get run out of the building, and then the game totally shifts. A&M scores a touchdown, a couple of punts to end the half, and then they open their opening drive in the second half is a touchdown, and it's like, okay, 21-14. The game feels brand new, and Marcel Reed's playing a whole lot better. And yeah, they score a touchdown. They end up scoring what, 21 straight points. And then it's a little bit back and forth toward the end, but even then, like A&M scores a touchdown to take the lead with what, 4 minutes left, and you just kind of feel like, okay, Elko's a defensive mind. He's got the lead, a 3-point lead, 4 minutes left. He's probably going to find a way to defend this. Plus, Auburn hasn't been, this. I mean, I don't know when was the last time they scored 40 points. Like, I mean, granted they scored 12
New
of them in
Mexico.
overtime, but like New Mexico. All right. Okay. What was that?
That's
The second game of the season or something?
third.
Okay. So like, yeah, it's just like they don't have a great offense. They have a couple of really good pieces on that offense, but
Uh,
um,
I'm wrong though. They scored 40 against UL Monroe the week before, but
oh,
like
I'm
that was,
sorry.
I'm
Well,
gonna dig
all
some.
that to say, I do you trust Auburn's offense with 4 minutes left? I don't. Like,
I don't trust. Like just last week we were saying Cal Hugh Freeze hasn't had his patented win over a team that you shouldn't be beating moment. We talked about how that Vegas number seemed weird to us. Vegas clearly knew something. I actually heard people saying that on TV that were like, "This Vegas must know something here, that this is a game so close." And what do we see? They're right. Well, not quite. I think they still had them underdogs by 2.5 points, but that line seems really, really close.
yeah. Well, and this is not the first time that Auburn's had a disappointing season, but their fans, to their credit, the final home game, they go nuts. Like, that place was super, super, like, loud, energetic from the word goes, an intimidating environment. They kept it, I think, the entire night, even as things tightened up. I don't feel like that the fans really got nervous. They were pretty engaged still. But yeah, it was just a wild one. Tough for the Aggies to. I mean, they hit Amari Daniels right in the hands for a 2-point conversion that would have extended the game to a fifth overtime. But yeah, an awesome game. Again, like we were talking about in that first overtime, when both teams have to go for it have to go for it for or when both teams have scored a touchdown. Auburn scores a touchdown second, and I was like, man, you should go for this, and you could potentially win the game without giving Texas A&M another chance at it. But it's a high risk, high reward one. But I would have gambled it. Um, Auburn 5-6, going to the Iron Bowl, bowl eligibility on the line, playing their best football, I would say. Like, this was their best game. I don't know if they can get up for 2 in a row, so that part we'll have to see. But there's, like, you were talking about the vibes and who's got vibes. Like, that game, going into that game, there was one team with very low vibes in Bama and very high vibes around Auburn. So very excited to see that next week. But man, that A&M Auburn game was wild and bonkers. Again, 2 different 21-point runs in that game from the 2 different teams, and then a back and forth affair from that point all the way through 4 overtimes. Or three overtimes, four overtimes. Yeah, because in the second one, or in the third overtime, neither one of them got a 2-point conversion. So anyway, that was kind of my take on that. What else? Was there anything else we needed to cover from this last week?
Let's see.
I mean, I watched USC UCLA as the nightcap just because I always will stay up for that late game. That's just me. Disappointing to not see UCLA be able to pull it out. I've not gonna lie, I'm very much pulling for Deshaun Foster and for that UCLA staff. I think that they're a bunch of cool guys. Would like to see them win. Yeah, tough one. Back and forth affair. That was fun. I don't think.
One game I didn't talk about was Louisville Pitt.
I only saw the score. I didn't catch any of that game.
Just Louisville blowing Pitt out. I did not see that coming. I mean, I think it was 27. It might have been even 30-0 before Pitt ever scored in that game. Like, I just did not see. I had it up in the corner, and I was just like, I thought like Pitt is one of those teams that's like did great and then just has fallen off. Talking about vibes. I mean, is that 4 straight losses?
I don't know.
Yeah, 4 straight losses.
Oof. That'll pour some cold water on the season, losing 4 in a row after being undefeated through 7 weeks.
Like their wins, you have a win of 28-27, 38-34, 17-15. Like you had some wins in that first 7 wins.
I think you had 3 fourth quarter comebacks in your first 5 games.
Yeah.
So a little bit of fool's gold there, maybe, but hey, they were doing what they had to do to win. Just couldn't keep it going. Oh, and it looks like we lost Corey. I'm not sure if his battery died, but I guess I'll jump in and keep this thing. Oh, he's coming right back. Excellent. We'll give him just a second. Yeah. Hey, welcome back. What were you saying?
I didn't mean to drop off somehow.
Are you good? You're all right. Let's keep it rolling. Did you have anything else for this week in review?
No, nothing else that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, we're 54 minutes deep, so maybe we'll wrap it there. What an awesome week! I am excited to see sort of the regular season finale this coming week. For those listening between now and then, happy Thanksgiving, safe travels if you're traveling, and we will see you on the next one where we preview rivalry week and all that will come with that. So thanks everyone. We'll see you.